Can you imagine a child being born already able to speak a language they never studied? What I'm about to share will make you rethink everything you believed about life and death. In 2018, in Curitiba, Maria Santos was making lunch when she heard her 3-year-old son, Pedro, murmuring alone in his room. Nothing strange, their kids often talk to themselves, right? But as she drew closer to hear Meller, her blood froze. Pedro wasn't speaking Portuguese, nor babbling the usual toddler nonsense. He was speaking German clear, fluent German, with accent and all. "Irmis, where's my wife? I miss her so much." Maria froze in the doorway. How could that be? Pedro had never left Brazil, never met German speakers. The family didn't even have cable. There were no Germans in the area, nothing at all that could explain it. And what unfolded in the following days was even more startling. Pedro began speaking German daily, not just isolated words-full dialogues. He described places, people, and entire life in German. When his mother questioned him in Portuguese, he replied as if he didn't understand. It was as though Pedro housed two identities. For a few hours he was a typical Brazilian boy. At other times he became someone else, clearly not a child. Ich bin Hans, 45J out. I'm Hans, I'm 45. A 3-year-old declaring he's 45 in impeccable German. Maria realized she needed a Judah. And you won't believe what the specialists uncovered. Over the next weeks, Pedro kept alternating between two completely distinct personalities. In the morning, he woke as a normal Brazilian child playing, asking for milk, speaking Portuguese. By afternoon, something shifted. His stare grew distant, as if recalling something ancient. Then he'd switch back to German, and not just the language. His whole demeanor changed. "Am Hausein Ingesarten." My house had a large garden. He drew homes with classic German architecture, steep roofs, specific windows, organized gardens, details unlikely for a Brazilian toddler. The drawings were remarkably elaborated for a 3-year-old. Maria recorded everything. When she showed the videos to the pediatrician, he was stunned. "This isn't typical, Maria. You should seek urgent, specialized help." That's when Maria met Dr. Carlos Ferreira, a psychiatrist focused on inexplicable cases. He'd studied paranormal phenomena for 2 decades but had never encountered anything like this. "May I talk to Pedro?" he asked. "Yes, but this afternoon he only speaks German." Then everything changed. When Dr. Carlos addressed Pedro in German, the child replied like an adult. Not only in vocabulary, the cadence, gestures, posture, everything was different. Via name. "What's your name?" "Ich heiße Hans Muller. Ich wohne in München." "My name is Hans Muller. I lived in Munich." The doctor was floored. Pedro's German had a distinct Munich accent. How could a Brazilian child have a regional accent? What Pedro said next shocked everyone. "Estarb, 1987. Isver engineer. I died in 1987. I was an engineer." Dr. Carlos understood he was witnessing something extraordinary. A 3-year-old Brazilian claiming to be a German engineer who died in 1987. Impossible, or maybe not. "Pedro, can you tell me about your life as Hans?" The child gave chilling specifics, his company, the exact address of his Munich home. His wife Greta's name, even his car model. "Is führen in blauen BM2, Greta liebt Rosen." I drove a blue BMW. Greta loved roses. Dr. Carlos contacted a colleague in Germany, Dr. Klaus Weber, an expert in reincarnation cases, and sent videos of Pedro speaking German. A week later, Klaus replied, stunned. This wasn't just fluent German. It matched how people in Munich spoke in the 1980s, expressions no longer in use, era-specific accent. How could a Brazilian child know that? Klaus decided to investigate. Using only Pedro's infos, he searched Munich records for an engineer named Hans Muller who died in 1987. The city archives confirmed it. Hans Muller, civil engineer, born 1942, died in 1987 in a car crash. Address: Maximilians Tract 45, exactly as Pedro had said. Wife: Greta Meller. Blue BMW, 1985 model. Every detail lined up. Klaus sent photos of Hans's former home. When Pedro saw them, he pointed to a second-floor window. Das war mein Büro, ich arbeitete dort abends. That was my office. I worked there at night. The inquiry was only beginning. Klaus obtained medical and police files about Hans's death. March 15, 1987, at 3:30 p.m. on the A9 near Munich. Returning from work, a truck lost control and hit his blue BMW head-on. Unexpected detail. His wife Greta was with him, and she also died. Paramedics noted Hans survived a few minutes conscious, calling out for his wife. His final words, "Wo ist meine Frau? Ich vermisse sie so sehr. Where is my wife? I miss her so much." They were the exact words Maria had heard Pedro say on day one. Klaus checked Pedro's birth, March 18, 2015, exactly 28 years after Hans's death, and 3 days after the death anniversary, as if a soul had waited decades to return. When Dr. Carlos showed Pedro a photo of Greta, the child burst into tears. "Greta, mein Lieb, warum bist du nicht hier? Greta, my love, why aren't you here?" It was a grief no toddler could fake, ancient and profound. 6 months later, Klaus persuaded Maria to travel to Munich with documentary filmmakers funding the trip. On the plane, Pedro oscillated Portuguese and German as if two selves struggled within. "Mama, ich will nach Haus." "Mom, I want to go home." But which home, Brazil or Hans's Munich house? Arriving in Germany, Pedro stopped speaking Portuguese altogether. Being there seemed to fully awaken Hans. At the airport, he gave directions in German to places a Brazilian child couldn't possibly know. "Fahren Sie zur Maximilians? Ich kenn den Weg." "Go to Maximilians, I know the way." The taxi driver was astonished. On the street where Hans lived, Pedro stepped from the car and went straight to number 45, a house he'd never seen. He cried, "Mein Haus ist anders. My house is different." The property had been renovated, new windows, paint, garden. Yet Pedro pointed out where the original garden had been, where the office stood, and the garage where the blue BMW was kept. Dort parked ich. Higher flanced Greta Rosen. The current owner, Herr Schmidt, confirmed there had indeed been a rose garden exactly where Pedro indicated. Inside, Pedro climbed directly to the second floor as if he knew the layout by heart. In Hans's former office, he went to a specific wall corner. "Hier habe ich meinen Ring versteckt, während ich arbeitete." Here I hid my wedding ring. Herr Schmidt had never found anything there, but behind a small loose board lay Hans Muller's wedding ring. The shock was overwhelming. Klaus proposed one final test, the cemetery. Maria hesitated. Her small son visiting a long-dead man's grave was terrifying, but they needed answers. At the vast Waldfriedhof cemetery, without signs or maps, Pedro walked with certainty like someone heading home. Dort. Sie ist dort. There. He ran and stopped before two side-by-side graves. Hans Muller, 1942 to 1987, and Greta Muller, 1945 to 1987, even in death, together. Pedro dropped to the ground, embracing Greta's headstone, crying like a man who had lost his soulmate. "Greta, warum hast du mich verlassen? Ich habe so lange gewartet. Why did you leave me? I waited so long." He spoke as if the stone could answer, as if 28 years of separation had found a voice. For hours, Pedro and the grave seemed in dialogo. Then came deeper revelations, intimate details only Hans and Greta could have known. Greta had Angst vor Gewittern. Ich hielt sie fest when he's donnert. Sie macht, when ich vor dem Schlafen sang. Greta feared storms. I held her. She loved when I sang before bed. Klaus contacted Greta's sister in Berlin. She confirmed everything. Impossible. Those were private secrets. Pedro revealed something never recorded officially. Greta was schwanger. Greta was pregnant. Klaus checked hospital records. After persistent requests, he got the full files. Greta was 8 weeks pregnant. The baby didn't survive. 3 lives lost that day, Hans, Greta, and their unborn child. Pedro added. Greta wollte den Namen Klaus für unseren Sohn. Greta wanted the name Klaus. A shiver ran through Dr. Klaus. Coincidence or something more. Then the most unsettling detail. Wir waren auf dem Weg zum Arzt. Das Baby bewet sich nicht. They were headed to an emergency appointment because something felt wrong. Hospital schedules confirmed an urgent obstetric visit was booked for that day. They never arrived. Pedro said Hans's soul had waited. Ich warte auf Greta und unser Baby. I'm waiting for Greta and our baby. But Greta hadn't returned. Why? Klaus dug through police notes and found Greta had been in a coma for 3 days before death was official. Perhaps her soul lingered caught between worlds. Reports over 28 years spoke of a blonde woman seen near Lake Starnberger, where Hans and Greta often walked, always near a flower garden by the shore. Das ist unser Platz. Dort habe ich den Antrag gemacht. That's our place. I proposed there. Klaus took Pedro to the lake. As they approached, the child grew agitated. Sie ist da. Ich fühle sie. She's here. In a bed of wild roses, Pedro began speaking, then pausing, as if listening. Tears came. Warum kannst du nicht mit mir gehen? Why can't you come with me? Klaus recorded everything. Later analysis revealed faint female whispers on the audio during Pedro silences German phrases in a woman's voice. He returned with more sensitive equipment. Frag Greta nach dem Baby, wo ist dies? Ask about the baby, where is it? After long pauses, Pedro translated the impression. Das Baby ist schon da. The baby is already here. Where? After another long hush. In Brazilian? Das Baby wurde gleichzeitig mit mir geboren. In Brazil, at the same time as me. Klaus chilled, tried to verify. Pedro described a specific birthmark, a small heart-shaped spot on the left shoulder. Klaus contacted Brazilian hospitals focusing on births on March 18, 2015, matching the time of Pedro's birth and the mark. Weeks later, Snow Lucas Maternity reported a baby born at 3:30 p.m. On March 18, 2015, same time as Pedro, with a heart-shaped birthmark on the left shoulder. Name, Sofia Oliveira. When Klaus reached the family, Sofia's mother, Carla, shared something eerie. Since toddlerhood, Sofia said she missed someone she called Daddy Hans. She'd never heard of Hans Muller or German, but she drew a man and woman labeled Hans and Greta, saying she had a father far away whom she would meet someday. Klaus arranged a meeting in a neutral park in Rio de Janeiro. 2 families, 2 Kriancas, 1 mystery bridging decades and continents. When Pedro saw Sofia, he ran to her and hugged her like an old reunion. Shy with strangers, Sofia hugged back immediately. Daddy Hans, she cried. Mein Klein's baby, Pedro whispered. Tears rolled. For hours, Pedro taught Sofia German words she repeated perfectly, as if the language had slept inside her, waiting to awaken. Mama Greta? Sofia asked. Dread sie wartet auf uns. C word common. Turn around, she's waiting for us. She come. The most striking moment came when Sofia drew 3 figures, a man, a woman, and a small child. She wrote Hans, Greta, baby, then connected them and wrote family in German. Klaus finally understood. Hans hadn't reincarnated solely as Pedro. His soul had divided part as Pedro, carrying memories and love for Greta. Part as Sofia, embodying the essence of the child they lost. Greta remained in spirit, hoping both parts would reunite so the family broken in 1987 could, in some way, be whole again. Months later, something extraordinary occurred. Pedro gradually stopped speaking German. Hans's memories faded, as if meeting Sofia had fulfilled his missal. Sofia changed too. She no longer searched for Papa Hans and began living fully as a normal child. The apparitions at Lake Starnberger ceased. Klaus believes the family finally reunited in the spiritual realm, Hans embracing his long-lost daughter. Greta meeting the baby she never held, and peace at last. Some stories outlast death. Some souls are too strongly bound to stay apart. Sometimes love finds a path even through two Brazilian children carrying the memory of a German family that should never have been separated. Did Pedro and Sofia's story move you too? Here at Path Ode to the Soul, I bring you the most compelling reincarnation cases from Brazil and around the world grounded in real research, documented cases, and studies from respected institutions like the University of Virginia. Names and minor details are adapted to protect the families, but the phenomena portrayed are based on scientifically investigated accounts. Each episode is a careful dramatization of events that truly occurred, inviting you to question everything you thought you knew about life after death. If you want to keep exploring these mysteries of consciousness, subscribe and activate the notifications. Every week, a new story inspired by real cases awaits you, moving, thought-provoking, and unforgettable.